You are now tuned into the sounds of Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
Tuned in to Big Nate Sports Talk, the show that is on all the time, anytime. And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Nathan Snell.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony Handy, for that and wonderful introduction. I need to get rid of that picture. That picture's old. I hope you're all doing well, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 478 of the podcast, 477. I've lost count by now. I've lost track how many episodes, but we are up there, ladies and gentlemen. But in this episode, we're talking Maryland football. We are almost at the end of the season for the Maryland Terrapins. We have two more games, but before into that, let's get some things off our chests. The Washington Commanders this week are on a bye week after losing to the Miami Dolphins in overtime. I'm talking a little bit about it this past week. Shout out to Sean Spencer. I'll talk a little bit about that in the video. The Baltimore Ravens play the New York Jets this weekend. Justin Fields is not the starter. Tyrod Taylor is in his place. So that should be interesting. We're going to talk about that. Maryland women's basketball, they did defeat Bethune-Cookman Thursday, and they are playing the George Mason Patriots Sunday. I actually will be at that game covering the game for Team MBS Media, which I have all that in the description below via Linktree. You can find it also too somewhere on the screen here, either here at the bottom or the bottom right, left to the right. You'll find it there. But also too, we also catch up on uploads via Spotify, Apple Music, and also Apple Podcasts. So stay tuned for that. And also too, we're almost at the and really almost at also towards the end of the NFL season as well. So stay tuned in for that. But thank you for the support you're giving me in this channel. It's much appreciated. Appreciate the new subscribers. We're on the road to 1K, and I do appreciate it. But let's get into it. Oh, and also too, be on the lookout for my first WNBA 2026 mock draft after this weekend. Also too is the draft lottery. I typically wait to do a mock draft after the draft lottery, because I think it's too, I can't really determine who's going to go where until I know who's going to have the number one overall pick. And more than likely, I'm going to say it's going to be the Minnesota Lynx with the number one overall pick for the 2026 WNBA draft. Guaranteed. Yeah. The Mystics, I believe, are also in the lottery. I actually think they'll finish the second overall pick. So crossing fingers. But we'll probably have the third overall pick more than likely. Guaranteed. Then there's Dallas in there. And then the Dallas Wings will more likely have the second overall pick. But that's neither here nor there. We're going to talk about Maryland football. But those are just things I just want to get off my chest before we get into Maryland football. It has been an interesting season. We are on a 6-game losing streak, and this has been a season, if I put the title, tough, disappointment, I can't think of some other words in there, but if one thing is I will respect is listening to their media availabilities throughout the week, each week, the guys are very, they stay poised, they stay resilient, they stay confident, and they stay uplifted. I mean, most people by now probably would have lost their minds losing 6 games in a row. But again, you have to also understand this is a whole new team, 64 new players, learning uh, a whole new system, and again, it's tough. And also too, we're dealing with injuries and other things like that. If you asked me before the start of this season what would this look like, I would not expect this to look like this. But we are here, and this is where we are. And this is also part of growing pains. When you have a young team, especially you have a freshman quarterback, and you're seeing where this program could be, and which transitions me to Mike Locksley, Jim Smith, who is our new AD, who's been the new athletic director. He put out a letter on the website, essentially committing to Mike Locksley, and we all know Mike is going to. This is now his 8th year as head coach, and last year was the first year post the 3 straight years winning consecutive bowl games, and that's the longest streak in program history. The biggest thing when I read the letter was his vision, his goals, especially. Excuse me, my apologies. Jim Smith's goals were catching up financially with the Big Ten, but also to prioritizing keeping players like Malik Washington, Zion Ely, the 5-star recruit who is committed coming here next year, supposedly, crossing fingers, but really trying to stay committed to that. I get it. We could bring up the record, we can bring up all of that, but the one thing that I think that bothers me is we can't pick and choose context. Now I know people are going to say, "Well, look at Indiana. Look what Cignetti is doing with that program." Well, the biggest thing is, again, it's all about funding, and I think also too, again, like Indiana started this plan almost like 5 years ago, like when they got Kurt, totally, and it just expedited. But it's not well, let's just hire a coach, and that fixes everything. It's things in place. Like, for example, right? So context matters. So while we can bring up, like, look at Indiana. I think they had, like, at one point, I think it was 2021, they had the 4th lowest total in spending in the Big Ten. Now I think they're like doubled what they've done, where compared to Maryland, which was not even close to what Indiana's done. But again, it's steps. But again, when you invest in improving the football team, and also to giving what your coach needs and the resources, that matters. You got to look also to the previous administrations. Damon Evans did not do that. Mr. Anderson before Damon Evans did not do that. And also too, like, it's easy to criticize a guy who came into a situation where he had to rebuild a team after a player dies, and where that you have to rebuild the culture, and you it's not where even for not just that, but when Maryland came into the Big Ten from the ACC, Maryland, we left the ACC strictly because of money. And when you look at where we are now, like, I think Purdue, outside of Maryland, is the only one who spends less than us in money. And then that's a problem. When you look at the rest of like before we got there, like Rutgers has spent more money than us. Um, the like the I call it the old before we joined them in the Big East, but they have always spent more money, and that's a problem. Um, I know Kevin Plank. We all know he is the founder of Under Armour. He donates. Over he's donated since he always donates to College Park. Phil Knight. I mean, he's not like Phil Knight from Nike, but he definitely gives back to Maryland. But I do think that when you invest and give what you need your programs to be successful, that is one thing. But also too, like I'm a believer in, okay, yeah, does Mike Locksley have his flaws? Sure. Like, should we have beaten Washington? Yes. We should have beaten Wisconsin. I agree with that. I will argue we should have beaten Nebraska. We should be six. We should argue 6-3. Honestly, I make the case really 500. Honestly and truthfully, but But again, a lot of it comes down to not executing properly on the offensive side of the ball, and also too when you're not executing with your offense, when you don't have a true running game, your pass catchers are struggling, your quarterback is struggling, your defense, can only do but so much. Those things will show. And Mike has has could he take accountability and saying we got to be better? Yes. Now there was a stat, I think it was prior to last week, where it talked about Malik's usage. Well, if you look, Deshaun Williams is his leading rusher. Nolan Ray, and I should have been better in understanding this, giving him some grace. He's coming off an ACL injury from last year. So when you don't have a consistent running game, and as the game progresses, you're going to have to rely on the pass. And unfortunately, Malik will have to use his legs. And we'll talk about the game against Rutgers and Illinois a little bit. But again, like, even if he had the resource, let's just say hypothetically he had the resources, it's a little bit different. Then I can say, okay, Mike, thank you for your services. But it's a little different when you kind of like understand and you kind of peel back the onion, because we have been in the middle for some time. Yeah, we've won 3 bowl games, but we could be better, and especially where NIL is, we are lagging behind in that, and that's not just with football. Kevin Willard tried to say the same thing last year, and that got completely. People didn't want to hear that. I can make the same argument for the women's basketball team to an extent. I mean, the gap between us spending compared to the rest of the Big Ten and Maryland spending, it is, I think it's like almost 20 something $1 million. That was last year. And that is, that says a lot. And, if we had the resources, I think it makes a difference. But again, like, last year, you got to think about this. You are coming back, to a staff where, a new team where you lost some players in the draft, graduates. You have a whole new staff this year, 6 new coaches, 64 new players, and you kind of have to say, okay, yeah, that's fine. You have to give him credit. He has developed players. Deontay Banks, as an example. Darnell Savage is an example. I mean, like, those are just a couple names just to give top of my head. But I'm just saying, like, could he be better in terms of coaching? Sure. But I think when you give a guy resources, that matters. And I'm really curious to see how we do that. And I wouldn't I wouldn't say Mike. I think Mike is a good guy. Mike knows what he signed up for. And I know he was on 105.7 The Fan. What was it, Wednesday or Thursday? And he talked about it. But I mean, you know, buying him out would have made no sense. I mean, I'm looking at right now, a young group: Malik Washington, Sidney Stewart, Zaire Mathis, Zion Ely, next year as an example. But again, also Mike is a good recruiter. James Franklin was hired by Virginia Tech. Congratulations. God bless him. I'm not worried. I mean, if anything, the ACC should be worried as a conference. Is James going to get his recruits in the DMV? Yes. Not just the DMV, PA, West Virginia, Ohio. Yeah. Okay. That's not going to happen. I'm not concerned about that. But again, like when you're also too, it's not just about the resources, it's also about investing, getting fans to invest. And it's not just a football team, basketball teams. If you're not invested in your teams, that also matters as well. So yes, I mean, I get it. You can't, if you're going to put a product out there, it matters. But there are some other teams that have won and they're not getting the same support. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can buy back those fans for Mike. But also, too, I wanted to shout out Chuck Douglas because he pointed this out. I got to find it really quick because this was pretty good. It kind of sums up what I'm going to wrap it up with this. But this is what he said, and I quote, "The cost of a coach change for Maryland, using the Virginia Tech deal with James Franklin as a reference point. Mike Locksley's buyout is $13.4 million. An assistant coach by an additional $5 million, which is $18.4. James Franklin's base contract, 5 years for $41.7 million. Bonuses up to $800,000 annually based on Virginia Tech's TV viewership of $4 million. Based on the ACC championship game and college football appearances, amount unknown. Promises of significant facility upgrades and investments to Virginia to bring Virginia Tech into line with top programs in the country, amount unknown. $9.5 million to Franklin's staff of on-the-field assistants. $6 million for supplemental staff, including data analysis, recruiting, and quality control staff, and sports scientists. Franklin will also get more money for support staff based on the number of games Virginia Tech wins, ranging from a $200,000 increase for assistants and $125,000 for supplemental for winning 6 games to $800,000 and $575,000 respectively for a 12-win season. The base cost for James Franklin for Virginia Tech is $70 million for a 5-year commit, not factoring in future facility upgrades, unknown bonus amounts, rev sharing, roster costs, NIL, etc. Approximately $90 million would have been the minimum 5-year cost for University of Maryland to terminate Mike Locksley and hire James Franklin or a similar accomplished Power 4 level coach, not including roster, recruiting class, attrition, the cost to replace scholarship players lost via the transfer portal. We are easily in the 9-figure territory here, folks. Hopefully, this puts into better perspective the new decision by Athletic Director Jim Smith, who has been on the job 4 months, to retain Coach Locksley for at least another season before making any long-term changes to the program. Agree or disagree whether a better funded resource Locksley is up to the task to turn the Terps around into a top 25 caliber program, it would have been an organizational malpractice to make any other decision the one that Smith made, at least until Maryland Athletics' financial house is in a much better place under his guidance, end quote. And I agree with that. We're nowhere near that at the moment. So let's see where this goes. And again, this is the same Jim Smith that worked with Vince McMahon. So it's not about the sprint. It's about finishing the marathon. I get it. I would like one day to see a national championship held for the Maryland Terrapins. I want to see that, but growth growth takes time, and yes, there's going to be some growing pains, and yes, this is the these are going to be certain things, but you know we guys got to see how it looks. But I'm confident in what he's doing. But again, when you do look at it, you do feel bad for Maryland athletics as a whole because you know look at the way it could have been better. And look at Indiana. Mark Cuban. He also too invested money. That matters. It's people put investing money into investing into the school. That matters. So, but when you have two ads prior to Jim Smith who didn't really do that, this is what you get. So let's get into the games. So we lost to Rutgers. That was a couple weeks ago. Just going to recap that. That was atrocious. Other than lost by 15. So the run game, I was shocked for the most part. Malik Wash had a 73-yard touchdown in that game, if I remember correctly. Nolan Ray had 77 yards. Deshaun Williams had 64. And then Malik had 164 yards. That was their season highs. Their defense, Rutgers, was probably the weakest so far. But we had no answers for them again running the ball. Antoine Raymond in that game had ran the ball for 240 yards. I don't know how you can fix that problem. And when you're opening up the running game, that opens up the passing game. And we just had no answers. Between I'll use in Nebraska and UCLA, we could have been better. But because against Indiana we get 367, I think we allow 193 against Nebraska and UCLA. But but 256 yards against Rutgers, no. Then I questioned some of the decision making in that game. The punting late in the game, that's when I just turned the game off. So, and then playing Illinois, where I felt good, I felt like we could do something, and unfortunately, when you're outscored in the fourth quarter, I think it's now at this point, 82-27, I think it is. And that's I think we're somewhere around 130, 131, 32 in D1. And I thought we could turn it around against Illinois. And that didn't happen. Illinois, we all know they are an experienced team. Because they got pretty much most of their roster there. However, I thought it could work, and that was a lie. 26-24. 24-6 was the final score in that game, and we just really could not find no answers. And injuries, we could say there's injuries. We've struggled with depth. For a good chunk of the season now. I just thought the defense, for the most part, ran out of steam early. Trey Reddick and Dede Holmes, they were out. So we were already razor sharp thin. The first half, we looked good against Illinois. I think it was only Ohio State and Indiana. I think that held them the fewest points of the year so far. And we gave up 14. Luke Altmaier, we made him feel uncomfortable. He was 9 of 16 in the first half. The Skaggs touchdown because Dante Jr. He got beat off. The handling got beat right there, but Jalen Husky had the interception, which I thought was really good. I think we're now 18 now, if I remember correctly, on the years, which I think is pretty good in terms of interceptions. But we for like one thing I've also noticed is the lack of either. I don't know if it's lack of communication or it's miscommunication, because in the second half, on the first defense, when we're on defense, Jalen gets caught watching the ball, and I don't know what that is. And after that was the game for us. My notes, I think it was like 4 of their last 5 drives. The ball went 61 yards plus, and most of that was running the ball. And when you run the ball, what does that do? Eats the clock up. And that's what really, honestly, truthfully, really hurt us. And then that I knew really, really kind of took away any chance of us really having a momentum. Now, which is a little weird for me looking at this offense, because I just didn't really think what this offense was going to do. Malik, if I remember correctly, had 140 yards passing at half. The running game has been the running game. I think it was 3 yards per carry. I think it was on 18 attempts, 55 yards. That's been our running game pretty much most of the season.
This is some bad stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I just don't know. This is ridiculous. Oh, Lord.
And then what's interesting when you look even at the game too, their defensive line, because again, as experienced as Illinois was, their pass defense, I thought we could take advantage of that. But one thing they did was they got in the passing lanes. They made Malik uncomfortable. They became, he had to be more mobile in the pocket. He had to make some throws where I'm like, what is this? Okay, fine. We looked okay, but we're not executing. And then, for example, I believe it was Dorian Fleming. I think that was that play. It was the 4th and goal. It was the 4th quarter. We were at our own. We're on their 1 yard line, and we had a chance to make it because it was one of those passes of Dorian Fleming, and then go all the way down the score. Malik, I don't know if it was he mistimed the route. I don't know what it was, but the play was for Shalik, but somehow he forced a pass to Dorian Fleming, and that was it. Indiana took 6 minutes off the clock before making it a 3-score game, if I remember correctly, after that. And it's decision making like that I'm like, why? Because Shalik was open on a crossing route. So I don't know what Malik saw to say, "Oh, see Dorian," because Dorian couldn't even make because that was a bad pass in my opinion. But I just thought after that, I just thought I'm going to be honest. I just kind of thought we collectively as a team just kind of just threw the white flag, and I when and I'm not going to say because I know some people on other people. Some people will say they quit. Some people will say they just kind of gave up. I think it's embarrassing when you see some of the questionable decision making late in that fourth quarter because okay, they're up 18 points, and case in point, more like we're not going to win the game with less than 3 minutes. Okay, but my question is. It's 4th and 4 on our own 31 with 3 minutes and 43 seconds to go. Why did we send Bryce McPherson out there to punt the ball?
I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. This is disgusting. It's disgraceful. It's embarrassing. And I'm ticked off. It don't make any sense. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable.
I just need someone to help me understand that. You instead of you had a potential because okay, here's the thing. There's context to that. I should have said that. My apologies. Because Illinois had declined a holding penalty. And it was on Ryan Howerton. It was on 3rd and 4, which we went from I think was been holding penalties for 10 yards, so we went 3rd and 14. And I'm confused. So why did you punt the ball? If you declined the penalty, it's different. Okay, I got 10 yards. Now suppose we had executed on 3rd and 14, and let's say it's 4th and inches. It's different. Now, with an injury, with the defense that's already dealing with injuries and already is, this, I think, all over the place and inconsistent. I think frustrated. I think tired. I think just. You can put any other word in there. Like to be down 2 scores like that. I just need to understand. I don't know what that logic was. Now, if I remember correctly in his post presser, he says that like the logic was it's something about we were 2 scores down, something like that. We could do a quick score, something like that. But that didn't make any sense. But we just proved. Then this was mind-boggling to me. We had just proved, if I remember correctly, going down the field 95 yards. So I don't understand what this is, but so yeah, that happened. So I don't know if Coach. I don't know if that just was Coach's just. I don't know if it was the 95-yard drive before. I don't know if that was it. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But that was that. I'll be quite honest with you guys. When we punted the ball, and I'm thinking on a 4th and 4 when we could have just gone for it, I turned the game off because it just was no point. What was I watching? Because that was just really questionable. You were given a lifeline and you didn't take it. It's third and 14. It's 10 yards. You had two downs. You could have made something work, but it is what it is. So oh my God. Okay, we're gonna take a quick commercial break. We'll be back. And tomorrow is senior day, and we got to play those Michigan Wolverines, ranked 18th, and coming in with a team for us where we have 2 games where we have Michigan State after this. I think these 2 games. I think let's go out there and let's try to finish the year on a high note, especially for the seniors. I know, especially for senior day, this is their last. Their last home game, but let's I think we can do something for playing against Michigan. They have been something so far this year. If I remember correctly, they've now lost to Oklahoma and they lost to USC. So they're actually 6-1 in the Big Ten. Coach Moore, we all know who took over for the guy who's now coaching for the Chargers. John Harbaugh, number 2. No, I'm just kidding. The great Jim Harbaugh, former Baltimore Raven, if you don't know. But so compared to what the team was last year to this year, it was a little different. He doesn't have Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum. They're now in the league, respectfully. There's a couple things I've seen from them a little bit. I do think their defense is something I already know that's going to be something to watch. Their run game is I'm curious to see how we're going to look against their run game. Indiana, Rutgers, and Illinois. And again, credit and in fairness, injuries and depth. We just we are razor sharp thin, and again, Michigan I think has been more dominant running the ball, but again, when you don't have your key players out there, it makes a little different. It makes a big difference. So I'm curious how we'll look against the run against Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes, Justin Haynes, because if I remember correctly, he was actually in the Big Ten in rushing yards for his foot injury. Because now it's just Jordan, who's now the de facto number 1 running back. So it's going to be interesting to see how we contain him. It is the battle of the freshmen, Bryce Underwood versus Malik Washington. Bryce if I remember correctly, he was supposed to go to LSU, but he is with Michigan now. So actually, Bryce is not doing too bad with Michigan this year. He's actually 10th, if I remember correctly, in passing yards and actually QBR. He's on 7 touchdowns. He has 5 rushing TDs on the year so far, if I saw those stats correctly. But I definitely think he's proven his 5-star caliber quarterback play so far. However, I do think for me, beating a team like this, we just got to see how we look defensively. I'm curious to see how Malik will look because both of them, especially, were highly touted, and see how Malik responds. But you're going to be against a team, especially also too defensively. This is going to be something interesting to point out, especially getting in the red zone. I'm curious to see how defensively we adjust against that. Because I think somewhere along the lines they have their 4th worst in red zone conversion. But again, I think they're very one-sided. I think they like to get ground heavy, kind of just like 20 touchdowns running the ball as opposed to passing. So I'm really curious to see how we will do against that. But my keys are as following. We got to take out, we got to contain the run. I would say, and it's kind of worked against Nebraska against Patrick Mahomes, number 2. In terms of how we did passing wise, but defensively, we got to take something away. But I feel like our defense is going to have to kind of, I just says we kind of have to rely on our defense, kind of have to kind of get us over the hump. But our offense is it's going to have to be the key. We're going to have to establish the run early for Maryland. I do see that running defense for Michigan kind of making things uncomfortable for us. But, when you have to face a guy of like Zach Berry and Jair Hill, that's going to be interesting to see how we look against the pass. So it's our last game at College Park for the year. I don't think it's going to be a blowout how everyone thinks it is, but it's senior day. I do think my attitude is, let's see how we look. Are we coming out aggressive? Let's see how the energy looks. We are coming in this thing. Listen, it's when we going to a bowl game or not. That's how I look at it. And especially for me as a player, I'm not my attitude as a senior. I'm not going out like that. I'm not going to have my last, my as a senior, my memories didn't get to a bowl game. So I feel like the fan part of me wants to say an upset, but I don't want to get too excited. But I'm going to say Michigan 27, Maryland 21.
Guaranteed.
That's just wishful thinking. But I don't see no score like. I hope I don't see a score like 55, like Indiana homecoming a few weeks ago. I hope to not see that again. But yeah, man, that's it. But senior days tomorrow. I wish those guys all the best. Games at 4:00, so definitely tune in for that. But we're going to get into one final thought, ladies and gentlemen.
Thoughts are running through my mind. Someone took some time to find a minute or two to organize.
On this one final thought, it's been interesting to kind of really hear how do I explain this? and I'm going to kind of more talk about it when the Ravens recap in a little bit. But I I'm just kind of confused on where we are with media today. It, it just doesn't make sense, particularly with sports media. I think we to just say anything and not make sure we're fact checking is kind of insane to me. For example, we all know that Shador is going to start this weekend, but last week he came in replacement for Dylan Gabriel. But to, I think, misquote or say that Coach Stefanski said that he was going to start Dylan Gabriel and it was a concussion protocol. That's insane. I just think we got to be careful with how we're putting different things out there. I just wanted to that's the first thing I wanted to say. But I also this is just kind of my next one final thought. This is a mental health thing, because I know we're with mental health, it is a real thing, and I do think no matter the situation, no matter what you're going through, I think it is important to make sure you're checking on individuals. Even with yourself, what you're dealing with. I think sometimes people on the outside are so quick to criticize and judge and not take a step back and go, oh, well, what are you dealing with? Well, what can I do to, make things better? Because instead of that, it kind of becomes more of guilt tripping. And I just kind of want us to be a little bit careful of doing that, because I think that can be a bit dangerous, because then I think that makes it more, it doesn't help a person, dealing with what they're dealing with in that moment. But check on friends, family, and all those different things like that, because mental health is real. There are people who will say it's not, but it is true. It is real, because you just don't know what a person goes through, what they deal with in a situation behind closed doors, plain and simple. But also too, during this holiday season, as we approach holiday season as well, there's going to be somebody at a Thanksgiving table that that may not be there, but and that also too can win on somebody. So I just want us to be mindful of those things as we're approaching holiday season. That continue to uplift and continue to encourage those. So that's just my one final thought. But until then, thank you for tuning in this episode of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Be tuned in for future episodes of the podcast. Painfully, the Baltimore Ravens have to play the New York Jets, and the Washington Commanders are on a bye week. That's interesting. And we'll talk about that this weekend. Maryland women's basketball, we'll talk about that. The Baltimore Orioles, I have a video coming out soon. We'll talk about that. I just want to get my thoughts on the offseason. Just my overall thoughts, I think, where we are going as a team. But until then, have a good night. Have a good weekend. Stay safe, and do something fun. But also, too, you'll probably see some videos before Thanksgiving break. But we're out of here. Peace. Stay up.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
And I want to thank you. All I want to do is say thank you.